Welcome to the Hanley Effect, a podcast by the Hanley Foundation designed to educate, change minds, and save lives. Our goal is to inspire you, showcase our innovations, and change the conversation about addiction and mental health. Join us as we unravel stories of resilience, recovery, and hope.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Hanley Effect podcast. I'm Dr. John Dyben here with Dr. Rachel Docekal. Rachel, how are you today?
Hello, Dr. D. I like that little voice. I heard the little gravelly.
You know, I like the little radio voice there.
Yeah, I heard it.
Well, Dr. D, I am very excited about our guest today. Do you want to tell us who we've got with us today?
Well, we have Joshua Love, who is the head of Headwaters. He is no longer residing in Texas. He has been with us for a while. Here is the big secret that I want to tell everybody about Joshua.
Uh-oh.
All right.
Secret.
Okay, I'm ready.
Today's his birthday.
It is my birthday. Thank you for remembering. 29. Yes, for many, many, many 29 so far. Yes. Thank you very much. It's great to be here with you on my birthday. I love it.
We will not sing, I promise.
Oh, well, as long as you sing out of tune, it's perfectly fine with me. So.
And just to be clear, she promised. I have not yet promised anything.
I know better than to ask you to promise not to do something absolutely fun and ridiculous while we do this.
So we'll see what comes out. So for those that don't know Joshua Love, we have the opportunity to know him. Joshua Love is, like Dr. Docekal said, he is the clinical director of our Headwaters program, and I'd love to hear about what that means and what that is. Joshua holds 2 master's degrees. He is a Master of Divinity as well as a Master in Professional Counseling. He's licensed as a chemical dependency counselor in the state of Texas, is a Master Certified Addiction Professional here in Florida. And so he's one of those guys that has this wild, varied background. And so we'd love to get to know a little bit more about you, about what you do, and what this Headwaters thing is.
And we want to know a little bit about the family work that you've been doing every week in the evenings. And
I would love that. Those are big passions for me, so I'm happy to share those things. So you referenced me not being in Texas anymore. I think we should just go a little bit back into history there. So I worked with this organization for many years in this tiny little place on the bottom tip of Texas, on the border of Mexico. Well, you got to fall off the bottom tip of Texas to get to it. And it was an island I never planned to live on, a tiny little place, and family is what took me there. I think a lot of us that end up working in the healing professions, especially in substance use and mental health counseling, sort of come to this because people in our lives needed help or needed support or were suffering, and we had a longing to be a part of that. In my life, that calling happened really early, way back when I was a teenager, 13 the first time, and then 16 when I took my first volunteer helping position. But earlier in the journey here with this organization, I was on that island trying to help my mom while she had surgery. And while I was there setting up her house and putting stuff around, she mentioned that there was an organization on the island that was hiring and I should apply. And I said, on this island, what would I do? Bartend? You've got to be kidding. It's all tourist and spring.
You're a good bartender. You're friendly.
I was a good bartender back in the day. So I applied, and there was a recovery advocate position that was available at the time. And, you know, I had master's degrees and other things that were happening for me. But I checked it out because I wanted to know what people were up to, helping the folks who were struggling with addiction and mental health there on the island. And, man, it was incredible. And I found this deep connection to what this organization does in helping people to heal. Now, I can flash forward through a bunch of other things. I worked in admissions, and I know you'll have some folks from admissions who are going to share some stories with you in this process. And I was a counselor at the men's campus there, and like Dr. Dyben, was a chaplain and did spiritual care work for this organization for a while too, and then was director of family services. We had this thing happen during COVID. We had a group of families that were in one of our locations who had been meeting in person, and they couldn't do that anymore during COVID. It wasn't safe for them at the time. And so one of our therapists at the time decided to bring that into the Zoom environment and see what would happen if families could meet and just talk to each other. And so every Wednesday night, those families came together and they just shared their experiences. their challenges, their struggles around having loved ones who were in early stages of recovery, but also about what it meant for them to start to heal. Now, I'm going to flash all the way to now. We not only are still doing those groups for free for families, and not just the families of our patients, but publicly free and available to other families who need it every Wednesday night, and we do it on Tuesdays at noon Eastern time. So Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern and noon as well Eastern time, and families can come. They can be there for a while if they want to. They can keep coming long term. We still have families, Rachel, 4 years later that engage weekly in the group and continue to give back from their experiences.
It's amazing.
So good. That's so good. Any idea how many states they call in
from?
Oh my
gosh. I don't know that off the top of my head, but you've got the research guy right there, and we're going to find out.
And one thing I can tell you is that we have, I do family therapy twice a month with somebody who the family member flies in from another country, and shared with me yesterday in session that she is in this meeting every week. So it's not just other states. We even have at least someone who from another country who's getting help and support through this.
I love it. And what's so powerful about it is it's not about the therapist providing the help. So we're not sort of processing in a more traditional therapy model. We're getting families to talk to each other. So if you come in and you have a question like, oh, my kid is in treatment right now and they don't want to go to this sober living thing, it's less about me processing that with you, but more importantly, it would be about John, another family, talking to you about how they went through that with their family and beginning to figure those pieces out. We have this extraordinary family services team that works for Hanley, and those counselors rotate through facilitating that group. So they're inviting the families they work with to be a part of the group. And then those families begin to offer support, learn, and grow throughout the process, hopefully also doing our family education program in the process. So, yeah.
I love that.
So good. So good. That's the Hanley way.
That's the Hanley way, without a doubt.
So is it okay if we talk a little bit about your own personal story a little more?
Okay.
I'm really curious about these. So you mentioned at 16, really having, like even as a teenager, having a call, something in you to help people.
Yes.
Where'd that come from? What is that about? What was that like?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, I grew up in a religious context that had a real commitment to community and to helping the people in the community who were struggling. So certainly that was a part of my spiritual life from a pretty early time. But I'll speak to my mom more specifically. My mom was a diagnostician and speech pathologist, and she was working in the public school systems with kids who really had access to almost no support otherwise. And so every day I saw my mom not only going into a job where people needed some support and help, but on the weekends then bringing kids to like help around the house or to do yard work to give them an opportunity to earn a little money to buy groceries for their families. And I remember seeing that and thinking, that's the way you're supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do for people, is find ways to help them, but also to give them the opportunity to have dignity in the process. Now, I didn't know what dignity meant then. Right, absolutely. But I would understand it over time. Like, my mom wasn't just giving people food. She wasn't just giving them an opportunity to have the resource of money or grocery. What she was doing was giving them a way of feeling ownership over that piece so that they had that sense of autonomy in it, which was really powerful. As time would go by, my family faced a couple of pretty major crisis points. In 1988, well, a little before that, about 6 months before that, my mom's older brother had to come home to live with my grandparents because he was dying of AIDS. And in 88, there were no medications to extend a person's life. And again, we were a very religious family. And at the time, my grandparents had a very hard time being honest and talking about what was going on for their son. And so that last 6 months as a family, our decision was to be dishonest about how he was dying. We said he had liver cancer. We didn't say he had AIDS. We kept him very much secluded and isolated in our family. We allowed the stigma of that disease to prevent us from having support from our community. And it hit me in a pretty profound way then that I didn't want to be a part of a family or a community or even a religious tradition that made people ashamed of the people they loved.
Powerful.
that kind of stigma happens for addicts and alcoholics all the time. And
today it happens.
Still happens.
Right.
Absolutely. So he died in February. My grandmother, then his mom, died in August. And for me, that was sort of a shattering point in our family. And I think families often have these, sort of you go along in a particular way. This is what we do. And then something happens. Some emotional or spiritual or perhaps even health crisis happens. And you have to go, oh, is what we're doing really working for us anymore? On the other side of that, what I knew was I needed a different way to live. And over the course of the next couple of years, it was a lot of teen angst as I was figuring that out, but ultimately left home when I was 16 and moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and found a way to begin volunteering with the LGBTQIA community. Back then, we just called it the gay and lesbian community. We've come a long way since then. But in that, I answered a crisis line that was coming into a national organization that had just...
At 16, you're doing this.
Yeah, I was so hungry to be a part of community. I had felt so isolated growing up as a gay kid and really not having a place to speak my own truth about that. And so when I found this organization, I asked them, could I just help in any way? And I dressed the way I should. Sunday best. I'd parted my hair and had a jacket and a tie, and I had big, crazy, wild 1980s hair back then.
Okay.
So that then
did we all?
I passed the interview process, and the next day came in with my real hair, and that woman still tells that story to this day. She's like, the kid in the interview was not who came in the next day. And I said, yeah. So I started answering the phones there, and part of doing that would be these calls that would come in from around the country from people who had seen an ad in a paper or somewhere along the way. And they would say, hey, I'm John, and I live in the middle of wherever, Kansas, and there's nobody like me here. And I got for a little while to be the person who was like them on the phone. And we would talk, and I started to understand that there's real value in bringing your own honest human experience to another person in suffering. Sometimes the most healing thing that we can do. I did a bunch of other things professionally over time. I worked in HIV and AIDS for a long time. Through that, found this really complex intersection with addiction and started recognizing that when people feel that they are often marginalized or they feel like people in the world don't get their life experience, they often turn to drugs and alcohol as a way to alleviate some of that pain or that suffering.
And that's fascinating. I didn't realize that. I never knew that about you at 16. I think about that journey to where you are now. So now you're the clinical director of a very specific kind of clinical program. And your patient population are people who are like executives, and you can tell us a little bit more about that. But I wonder how that stigma impacts that population specifically, because when people think of CEOs and people think of people, power and who have wealth and things like that, they think, they don't have any problems. I don't want to hear you don't have any problems. So what is it like working with that population, and how does stigma affect them?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. I think it's just a core truth that addiction knows absolutely no boundaries, right? There are no socioeconomic limits on who is impacted by addiction. There is no way to prevent yourself through any external circumstances from having the potential to be an addict or an alcoholic. Some of it's genetic, some of it's environmental, some of it's just stress. So imagine being then one of those folks who's at the top of your game professionally, maybe come from a family of legacy, generations of reputation, of making change in the world, of developing really powerful structures for the way that the rest of us live, and then finding yourself struggling with addiction. And knowing that the entire world is looking at you and going, not you, John, couldn't be you, Rachel, absolutely not. And if you then talk about what you're suffering or struggling with behind closed doors, people might then believe you were not really going to be successful long-term in the thing you had built your life on. So the thing for many Headwaters patients that can be most challenging is understanding it's okay to have a safe, private place to be vulnerable and authentic about that part of their lives. I think often about the patients who come in just trying to figure out how to balance the addiction for so long. How do I balance this addiction that I know I'm getting worse and worse, and I know I'm not in a place where I'm really handling it that well. But at the same point in time, I have these overwhelming public, often very public identity responsibilities. How do I balance those things? How do I begin to find a way that the person I am behind closed doors is not affecting the person I am out in the world? Often for our patients, the entry point into the safety of our staff relationships with them, the privacy of Headwaters, is the first time that they really, really get to let some of that public identity be set aside and get to that core part of their humanity, which is hurting, which is struggling.
You know, the individuals of ultra high net worth are in situations all the time where, you know, they are eating, they are drinking. It is built on this ritual. You know, do you want a glass of bourbon? Do you want a glass of scotch? Do you want a fine wine with dinner? And, you know, I've had people say, you know, I can't do my job if I can't go out and play a round of golf with the guys and have a couple of drinks on the course. I mean, they would just look at me as if I was crazy.
Yep.
How do you confront that sort of societal pressure that is just baked into what these people do, male and female?
Absolutely. Those are great sort of pressure points, I'll say, clinically. And I use the word pressure very intentionally because for our patients, there are these moments when they have to push against or consider where recovery will have to overcome the social pressures, the expectations of role or identity. So we actually build outings, sober outings, into their experience in Headwaters. Our patients have an opportunity to go together as a community to play that round of golf, to do sometimes some pretty amazing wild stuff that they pick too, like that axe throwing stuff. It's fascinating to me, you know, the escape room, right? But things like go on a boat and tour around Palm Beach and be able to explore this beautiful environment in South Florida, but to do that sober and to confront the emotions that come up when they learn how to socialize without drugs and alcohol in the environment. Yeah. I think back to a couple of particular cases when I first came to Florida in which there were these huge wine collections. And, you know, that's an investment. You don't expect me just to get rid of all of my wine. But fundamentally, the real question was, you don't expect me to stop being with my friends. You don't expect me to change the way I spend time with my wife or my kids. So as we're looking at when those questions come up, part of what we want to do is help people envision a different way of being present with people. What would it look like for you to find other meaningful traditions and rituals? What would it mean for you to find something else that you could do with the people you love that would enhance that relationship? Learning to cook together, right? Creating a time in which you and your kid have like your special mom and kid night, right? Beginning to learn how to do things like contribute to the well-being and the health goals of the people you play golf with. So, for example, maybe you're not drinking and he's not drinking sugar and she's not going to be doing caffeine for a while. And so creating sort of shared common experiences with the supportive relationships. Now I want to say something about how we talk about family in Headwaters and in Hanley, really. But in Headwaters in particular, it's really important to know it's not just the traditional definition for many people of family.
Right.
This includes business partners and assistants and all of these folks who can be very involved in important ways.
Person who manages your trust.
Absolutely.
Your best friend.
Your attorney, right? Yes. And so for many of the folks who come into Headwaters, we're also helping them learn how to have a new level of honesty with themselves, authenticity even with the people around them, so that support for recovery becomes a priority of everyone within their version of a family system. It's not just as simple as them wanting it. Everybody needs a little education, a little understanding about how to begin to cultivate, manage it, and I would say put recovery first, because when recovery is centered in their family and supportive relationships, after that, then all the other good stuff they want in their lives gets to happen.
Good. Let's talk a little bit about some of the leading edge innovation going on in the Headwaters. I've seen the marketing for. I know there really aren't a lot of programs in the country that are working with this ultra high net worth population. most of them talk about amenities. And I mean, Headwaters is just gorgeous,
Right.
but the amenities are about this much of the work that you're doing. Talk about the Own It program.
Yeah, so I think it's that balance, right? Always remembering we have a core clinical program. We're there to help people heal from that place. So I could spend 3 hours on a podcast just talking about what I love about all of that. But I want to balance that by what you're asking, which I call the complementary integrative therapies. And in this, it's where you begin to look at something that Hanley's been amazing at for a really long time, which is healing at the intersection of body, mind, and spirit.
That's right.
Body, mind, and spirit. If you think,
And that sounds cliche because people are using that. We're actually doing it.
absolutely, and have been for a long time.
A long time.
What's really powerful to think about is this: if addiction can impact us at the level of body, mind, and spirit, then the healing process has to happen at those same intersections. So, for example, we're doing a test run right now among the staff. Don't notice that my ring's off right now, Rachel, because it's I probably left it by my sink this morning. So we're testing this process in which we are getting real-time biometric information about ourselves through a daily process. Something we wear 24 hours a day. I won't say the name, but folks can figure that one out. But in addition to that, genetic testing, which then looks at in the state of our bodies today. So for me, that's my 50th birthday. So at my 50th birthday,
Don't sing it.
I know
I'm holding back.
Yeah.
I'm holding back.
Not yet. Are there existing deficiencies in my system which need to be supplemented or enhanced in some way to bring me to a higher level of wellness? In addition to that, that information ultimately looks at where vulnerabilities for certain health issues might be. Now, as someone who has dealt with addiction in my life already, what I know is I have both a genetic predisposition for that, but I also am somebody who had a lot of things happen in my life, stress-wise, relationship-wise, trauma-wise, which ended up with me struggling with that in my life. So what I know then is if my body is being taken care of, then I also have the energy to do the work I need emotionally around those other things.
My favorite part, actually, of this pilot are the other two pieces that go along with it. The blood testing at the cellular level, and then the last piece, which is the food sensitivity testing. I will say until I figured out that I had an intolerance to gluten. So it didn't really show up as celiac, but an intolerance to gluten. It's changed my life. I mean, it really, really has. I would, if I had gluten, a couple hours later, I would be crabby and I wouldn't understand. You look so amazed at that.
I don't believe you could ever be crabby.
Experienced her
Never. I don't believe it.
Well, it is really true. I promise. Anyway, those four things together are really giving us a good indication of some of the ways that people are off-center. Why don't we say it that way?
And not just how they're off-center in the general sense, but a snapshot of off-center as they enter treatment.
Yes.
That's what'll be cool about this program is at Detox, a lot is off-center. They're walking in. Their whole system is off-center. Over the course of time, as our medical team is helping them to begin to get sleep in healthier ways, as the data is coming in from the biometric readings, telling them, oh, last night you only got 5 hours. I don't know if you know this yet, but several staff members are reporting 5 or less hours a night of sleep. Now, we had a big event this week, so that's part of it. But as we're looking at that, like in detox days 1 through 3, right, I slept awful. It was a mess. But then 2 weeks into, I'm looking at that same data and I'm going, oh, wait, I actually slept 6 hours last night. 5 the night before that. 7 tomorrow. And as they begin to see that progress, they also can look then with their therapist and with our team in a beautiful way about how to improve the things which get better results.
And feel it.
Absolutely.
Feel it.
Absolutely.
So good.
So I think the program right now, when you talk about sort of the leading edge pieces that we're doing, the addiction treatment industry has gone through a lot of stages, and some of those were great. And let's face it, some of them were not. Some of them were very much about profit in the past. So being able to work now for Hanley Foundation, which is a nonprofit, which has this full range of services, which go from early intervention and prevention efforts all over the state, being able to really get to where people are in the streets with their need, all the way through to what we're doing at residential. We have our detox. We've got our residential care. We have multiple programs within that. Older adults and a women's program. And I love this one, this brand new pregnant moms program that's coming in.
Unbelievable. It's so exciting.
So incredible, where women can come in to get that treatment while pregnant, have their babies, and still get support after. Amazing.
That's right.
So you can find me.
Absolutely.
Golden babies.
And our men's programs, my God, it's so many amazing things. Our residential mental health, all of these pieces that we're doing really are about helping people to understand the state they're in when they arrive, and then learn how to gauge their progress and what works for them. I used to talk with Dyben. We were working on some projects in the past, and I sort of said it this way. Addiction by its very nature is a disease of disconnection.
Mm-hmm.
The first disconnection is from self, and then it's from the people around us, those most important relationships that help us know who we are and what we need. And then beyond that, it's what some people would call the connection to the spirit, to God perhaps. And I'll give it in a really simple sense. It's disconnection from self and others and that which gives meaning to life and in life.
Mm-hmm.
For so many of our patients, they walk in the doors no longer knowing who they are, what their connection will be with other people, or how to improve or heal or reconcile pain when it has happened there. And they don't know what they're about anymore.
Right.
Your resume can say everything you ever did and say absolutely nothing about how you are right now. And for many people in Headwaters, they are people of great accomplishment, legacy builders and innovators who have done incredible and powerful things, or are a part of families or systems that have done that. But when they walk into our detox and they begin our program, the truth is they are human beings who are asking a fundamental question, which is, can I change?
That's right.
Do I want to change? What would change look like for me?
How would it feel?
How would it feel? Absolutely. What would it feel like to be whole again?
Will these folks who I really love, care about, will they be with me if I change?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Who will walk with me?
Let's talk about confidentiality.
Sure.
People of fame, people of ultra high net worth, people who have Wikipedia pages about them. Those folks today, right now, are in treatment at Headwaters. And talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we, while we were a part of the large Hanley Center, in which there are many programs, our patients have private space that is Headwaters only. And as we are evolving into this new growth period of time, which is exciting, and I hope in one of the podcasts you're going to talk about some of the big things that are happening.
Oh, yeah.
But Headwaters is also expanding to create an even more integrated whole space in which our patients will be able to do almost every single aspect of their treatment with the staff of Headwaters and the other peers that they have in the program. Why is this important? All of us are protected by federal and state laws for privacy and the ethical codes that therapists have and other people who are providing services. But for people whose public identity could become a barrier in some way, or we'll say exposure about some part of their addiction because of the stigma that we still have in society, for those folks, what we want to do is create a space that says, Rachel, in spite of what the world might think about this right now, here, you can be safe to just be you. That sometimes is harder to do than people realize because it is about training and retraining and mentoring staff and helping them to understand why that matters. Why you don't go home and tell your spouse who it is that you just checked into treatment. Why you don't share it with your best friend.
Right.
What we are committed to is making sure that the environment is first and foremost safe, but beyond that, not just safe, but actually nurturing. And knowing that you can be a real human being with privacy, right? With cultivated, curated, important and committed privacy is so important in that process. I love the moment when you see somebody who comes from this very public identity, sort of in the world, people might be intimidated by them, but suddenly they're sitting with the person who's in the chair next to them, and they're just two people
Yeah.
Just two people talking about shared experiences. Oh, my wife did that, or oh yeah, my kid does that. And they're talking about those moments in their lives that they share that are really just parts of who they are.
And in part, that's possible because all of the individuals in Headwaters have the same background. So we may have two professional athletes at one time, for example, or two, very public media figures at one time.
Absolutely.
They can relate to each other.
They can relate, and they also work with a staff that is given an opportunity to really go through a lengthy process of understanding how to support them in that process. I'll use one class of folks that we love supporting and that we really, I think, do a good job with, and that is folks who have licenses. So, for example, lawyers and doctors, right? When one of those individuals has a situation like a DUI happen, they then are going to have to protect that license through a long-term monitoring process through their state medical board. And that can be a really complex process to get through because you got to be tested randomly over long periods of time, and there's a bunch of other counseling pieces that have to happen. So if someone comes in, John, I'll use you for a second.
Use me
right?
anytime.
John comes in and he needs to protect his license. There are some things that need to happen at the residential level of care that he may not like in that process. One of the first things we do is really help them understand that we are their allies in their life goals. So whether you're a politician or an actor or a CEO or a doctor or a lawyer or a pilot, John, pilot, right? Whatever it is that person sees as valuable in their identity and that piece of that, what we do is we say, we are allies with you and having a way for you to be that, to live into that part of what you care about, but to do it in a healthier way. I think about some of the cases, over time when we've really worked with challenging, and I'll say case management dynamics sometimes. You have to be able to create rapport with the case manager, with the medical board, with the patient. You got to bring people together. And sometimes that's a little bit like a parent mediating among the kids in the house, or a therapist who's helping a couple learn to talk to each other again in new and fresh ways. So I think one of the first places we do healing with them is often helping them to understand that while we are going to help them change their life, we're doing it really through their autonomous decisions about how they want to live their life. It's not us and someone else against them ever. It's always us walking with them, helping them get where they want to be.
And that takes a beautiful skill set to be able to do.
Thank you.
I should just note for our listeners that the ability to treat people, professionals like this, is actually a special licensure. You can't really access this type of care at the majority of treatment centers. This is, it is a rigorous process because we need to make sure that our pilots, for example, are safe to be in the air, or our doctors are safe to go back into surgery.
Absolutely.
So it's, that's a very, very specialized license that we have.
And so we're coming to the end of our time.
No way.
It's already there. But it is your birthday, Joshua Love.
It is, yeah.
And I'm not gonna sing because I would much rather give Joshua the last minute. Joshua, you have hit this 50 milestone, and you get this moment to wrap us up. And what is one thing that you would want people to hear from Joshua Love?
I'll take this moment then to say what I want people to hear about Headwaters, because right now, in the way that I do it, any work I have over the years, I'm giving myself to that. I'm in it.
You do.
I'm really committed and passionate to what we're doing. In Headwaters, we are all about relationship. And I want to say that very specifically like this. The relationships that we have with one another in the Hanley Foundation, the ways in which we are so deeply connected to creative and collaborative relationship, we invest all of those relationships in our patients. And that's not lip service. We really do. At 9 o'clock at night, when I'm getting a text message from Dr. Docekal, who's there going, hey, it's Rachel, I got a question for you, right? Or I'm talking to you, John, about something. We're doing that because we built healthy relationships with each other first. And then from that place, we began then to cultivate a space where people can get healthy with us. Headwaters does some really cool stuff that other treatment centers do. We do a bunch of stuff that they don't. But most importantly, we bring together people who are first and foremost committed and connected to relationship, collaborative, healing relationships. And I love getting to do this work. I hope I get to do it for a really long time.
We do too. Joshua, thank you so much for being here. And I just love that. And it's the perfect wrap up. Dr. D?
I just love you. You're amazing.
Love you too.
I am so happy to be a member of your team every day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me be a part of this. So thanks, and happy birthday.
Thank you for joining us for the Hanley Effect. To learn more about our programs, visit hanleyfoundation.org or call 844-502-4673.